Marriage, like money, is still with us, and like money, progressively devalued. Robert Graves.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Mentality. It's your boy Gambo, and as always, I'm here with Simmons. Today, we're discussing joint finances during a relationship. Who is it for, and should you do it? Stay tuned as we chop it up in another interesting episode. Welcome back to the show, guys. Drew, how you feeling today, bro?
Chilling, boss. How you feeling?
Can't complain. Today, we have an interesting topic, and I'm just curious to see what you think. And the topic that we're going to be talking about is joint finances. Should you joint finances or should you have separate accounts? And we're going to assume that this is for marriage or even when you're not married, but that would be kind of stupid in my opinion. But what do you think?
Well, first things first, who in their right mind is joining finances not married? I just need to get that out there because evidently that's a thing that I just learned about that people are doing. If you're doing that, let us know what possessed you to do that. Maybe you know something that I don't know, and you can put me on to some new knowledge. But as of right now, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of in my life. The second most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life is joining finances, regardless.
Why do you think that's ridiculous to join finances?
You can't trust nobody nowadays, man. You out your damn. Absolutely not.
Well,
Absolutely
so
not.
let's look at it from I know it's not an objective truth, but let's look at it from outside of our own subjective nature, right? Let's look at it from the perspective of someone who's in a marriage or in a relationship that they trust their spouse or they trust their partner. Is it better to have joint finances or separate finances? I think that's the real conversation.
Okay. Well, when you put it like that, then yeah, join your finances. But I just don't trust people, so I'll never join finances.
Wow.
Maybe that's just me being jaded, and maybe it's me just being like, whoa, like I don't, because I can't. You know how they say don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
To me, that's what joining finances is. It's like, you know what? This person here, 100% guarantee, is never going to do X, Y, and Z to me. I'll never do X, Y, and Z to them. Therefore, your money's my money's your money. Put it all together. Which, in theory, and like I'm pretty sure in practice, I just haven't learned it yet, is an amazing system. But to me, I just don't have or haven't met someone that I can have the capacity of trust to do something like that.
Wow. I'm gonna come for you real quick because a couple things. One, I know how you feel about your views on marriage because I know you, but I do want to ask, in your relationship when you were serious and committed, did you have joint finances or were they separate?
So that was a very large argument of whether or not we were going to join them or not. I never wanted to. And then once we did, my fears were kind of confirmed, and I'm going to say this, I got to give credit where credit is due. I should have been eager to join finances from the jump because my ex-wife made almost twice as much as me, and she was so much better with money than I was. So like my dumb ass, like, hey, it'd be really wise for you to like learn and like see how you're supposed to actually budget and like take care of your money and stuff like that. But me being stubborn, I didn't. So that just caused a lot of its own issues as is. But we eventually did join them.
Okay.
And
What was that
then
like?
my fears were kind of confirmed in terms of what ended up happening. Because there was a lot of, even though we joined them, the trust aspect from both ends wasn't there. So it was a lot of, because again, she made more money than me. She outranked me and everything. So it was a lot of kind of throwing things in my face type of situation where it's like, okay, yeah, we joined the finances, but I'm contributing more because I put more in and I have my own separate bills that I pay on and still pay these. And there was a lot of back and forth with that. So
I see what you're saying.
that's why I talk about the trust aspect of you trust somebody not to do some shitty shit like that to you.
Well, see, I think that it's a deeper layered conversation because I think that's not speaking just in terms of like joining finances. That's also like speaking in terms of who's the breadwinner of the family, if you will, or who has say or control over what. So I think,
Well, that's exactly what joint finances is.
well, not necessarily. So there are different aspects of joining finances. I know there's different methodologies from people that I've spoken to before this episode. The one of the more common ones that I've heard of people doing is that they basically have like 4 accounts. I know it sounds crazy, and so they have like one main account, and what that happens is they have all their like income routed to that account, and that's the main account that they both have access to. And then they have one for a savings account, and they have like two different ones for their individual accounts. So the one offshoot from the main account is savings, paying bills, whatever have you. And then your main account just basically funnels to all your other accounts. So you have your own personal spending account, and then they have their own personal spending account, and then there's one that pays all the bills. That's honestly more of a hybrid system, is what they call it, as opposed to, joining finances, because there are some people who literally will join in finances and they're spending money from just one giant pool of account. And they have a conversation about when they're making large purchases. And I guess that's more traditionally what joint finances are. But as time has progressed, you see more and more offshoots of it, and people kind of maneuvering to kind of make those adjustments to fit their lifestyle.
So I don't see that hybrid model as technically joining finances because you're really not. It's kind of the same as just having separate finances and y'all just happen to put money into an account that all the bills come out of. So I don't really see that as being different from just having separate finances, really.
Well, it is, because you have your finances joint in the sense that you are paying bills down together. So, for example, if the rent is due, y'all are gonna pay that rent together, that mortgage, whatever it is, the car payment, whatever it is, you guys are paying that together. You're not paying it separately. Like, true separation of finances is when you have a spouse, we have a couple, and they are literally handling everything separately. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, when it's time to pay the rent, I'll probably, give you 50% of the rent, and you give me 50% of the rent, and we'll pay the landlord. It's almost like a roommate situation. And
Well, that's no different from having that joint account because how do you determine how much you put into that account every month without
right,
saying,
that's
I'm going to put in 50%, you're going to put in 50 or 60-40? And how do you determine the split? Determine it on like who makes more, or do y'all split it down the middle?
right. And so
I mean, I know you don't have to yes for that. It's so subjective and shit. But,
No, but
it's just me thinking out loud at you.
just me asking people before, like this episode. So people do it in different ways. There's like a percentage thing that people do sometimes. If, say, for example, you're in a relationship with someone and they made more than you, right? You would come to a consensus about who pays what percentage of bills. So if the person made $100,000 and you made $50,000, they probably make 50% more than you do. So they'll pay that much more than you would, and they'll split the bills down like that. It's just depending on, like, there's different styles of the way people want to join their accounts and pay for bills and stuff like that. But there's also like situations where you have like one person who's pretty much just generating income in like very traditional marriages or traditional relationships. You have one person who's generating all the income. You have one person who's, the housemaker, and they spend all the money that's generated by the breadwinner. And that works for some people too. And I think that's more so in the traditional sense of joint finances.
What do you think about joint finances? Would you do it?
Boy, personally, I don't think I'm at that level yet, so no. I could see maybe
No,
a
not
hybrid.
right now.
You said not right
hybrid.
now?
Yeah, not right now. Like you married. You found the love of your life. Y'all married. Y'all planning on having 5 kids and shit and going
Yeah.
getting playing instruments and starting a band. Y'all married. You joining finances or what?
And see, that's the thing, because I feel like I just can't think of that right now. Like, I'm not at that stage of my life yet. So it's difficult for me to think like that. I can maybe see like a hybrid situation, maybe, but probably not. Like, I've been so independent my entire life that I'm just so used to paying for things myself, doing things my way, not answering to people by the way I spend my money. And that's a lot of the conversations you kind of get into when you talk to a lot of millennials who are more and more finding their own ways of just having separate accounts or having separate finances when they get into these serious relationships. Maybe there's a trust issue there too. I don't know. I can't really speak to that in terms of finances, but I just know I like my own freedom and my own autonomy to be able to do whatever I want to do. I don't want to have a conversation about making a purchase and so on and so forth. I guess from a outside perspective, it really is selfish, I guess, if you really dig down to it. But I mean, that's just how I feel about it.
Okay, so that's a very long roundabout way of saying no. We ain't joining finances, but it's cool, bro. You do your thing, man.
I'm just saying right
'Cause I'm,
now.
I'm the same way.
I'm saying right now, I don't see it. I mean, you never know who you're going to be, 10 years down the line or, however long down the line. You don't really know that. 10, 20 years, I don't know who I'm going to be. I just know I can speak for myself right now. And I also know, like, it seems like a lot of times the cause for, like, people just kind of having separate finances, if you look back into it, it's just, I think it's also just the way that families are structured now. So, like I kind of mentioned earlier, before you used to have, like, the breadwinner and then you have, like, the homemaker, right? One person's making all the money, but the one person is taking care of the house. So it just makes sense that y'all spending one pool of money. Like in 1960, 65% of children pretty much grew up in that kind of structured household. Whereas today, you only have about 22%. People are just not used to that no more. Like people are used to like, all right, you got a job, I got a job, we both working. And by the time they get together and get married, they already have built their own spending habits. They already have their mindsets on how to do things financially. And so it becomes ever more difficult to kind of just join finances. Would you agree with that analysis?
100%, because again, everyone is so independent nowadays. It's. I'm not gonna say like not feasible to join finances, but it's just like, why would you? Besides like and I get the benefits of why you would. More money towards shared common goals with someone you've intended to spend your life with. That's beautiful. That's great. So are cartoons and fairy tales and shit, but I live in this little thing called reality. So it's like I cannot subscribe to us sharing money. I don't care how much. If you make 3 times as much as me, I don't got nothing to do.
That's your money,
That don't got
right?
nothing to do with me.
Right.
That's yours. You earned that. You went to school for that. You went to work for that. The same way, if I'm making a tenth of what you make, we not loaded. You loaded. I'm doing what I'm doing. If we decide to cohabitate,
Yeah.
cohabituate, one of those
Cohabitate.
words. Bet we decide to do that. We're gonna have to scale some things to a percentage because I can't afford to live the lifestyle you trying to live, and you're probably not trying to scale down to my studio apartment level of lifestyle. But that's the thing. Like besides that benefit of you both have income towards share common goals, I don't see any other benefit of combining finances. And people will say when you split everything evenly, you're in like a roommate scenario, quote unquote, which I don't know why that's always like the biggest argument. If you don't share finances, you're like roommates, because like, are you not roommates? Do y'all not share a roof? Do y'all not
All right.
split chores evenly? Like,
So you've
yeah,
addressed
yeah,
it.
y'all in love and shit, cool, but like,
All right. So
you're
you've addressed
roommates.
a couple of things that I want to touch on a little bit. Like one, you kind of question, what are some of the benefits of having joint finances? I'll touch on that a little bit. And you also kind of mentioned, scaling down to the other person's, or scaling down or scaling up to the other person's income potential. Now, that's interesting because it kind of goes into when we talk about, are women intimidated? I mean, I'm sorry, are men intimidated by successful women? Because there's always that gap, there's always that rift, and that could be. There's typically not the other way around. If the guy makes more, because typically the guy's like willing to just like, hey, let's scale up together. Whereas like if it's the other way around, it's usually a little more tricky because of societal, norms, and also just the way the behavior and actions that come with that. So it's always more trickier, I feel like, in that sense, and I think that's a good point. And so maybe that's one of the reasons why people kind of like force or find people who are on the same social economic ladder as they are. Maybe not. I mean, just food for thought. But when we get into the pros of having joint finances, now I'm not saying I necessarily condone this, but there's been multiple studies that like have shown and proven that relationships that have joint accounts are more likely to succeed than the ones that do not.
But do you
About
know why that is? And I'm gonna stop you right here. Do you know why that is?
I'll get into it. So about like 20% of people who don't have joint accounts end up having, failed marriages, whereas like only about 4% of people when they have joint accounts will have failed marriages. And we know that finances are one of the major contributors to divorce, at least in the U.S. Now, to answer your question as to why that is, I think the reason is because when you have joint finances, not only are you forced to like communicate as a couple, I think it opens up a lot of communication between you people, between each other, and also it drives transparency. You have to be transparent. Like you can't do shit without being a partner. You have to be a partner with that person. And so it drives that coexistence. It drives that mesh together. That's what I would say.
That's 110% absolutely correct.
Oh, wow, you agree. Okay.
It forces the shit out of asking all those hard questions. You were like, I'm really not trying to have that conversation. It makes you have that conversation. Right. It makes you both constantly, continuously, because you budget every month, have that hard conversation to have of like, where's the money going? What'd you buy? This is what I bought. There's nothing to hide. Total transparency. And that kind of goes back to like the main relationship maker or breaker is communication.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And communication, I feel like in any relationship, is key. There are also other like financial, benefits. Like I've heard stories about, people who have like separate finances, but then one spouse dies, and then, their spouse might have had like a trust or an estate that they kind of have in the shell trust, and now your spouse can't have access to it. But because you are married, you have all their debts, and now you're fucked because you technically have a pool of money that you should be entitled to, but you don't even have access to it. It's fucked in that sense because it's important in a sense that if one of y'all dies, unfortunately, you do have that access to money that you otherwise would not, and that could be a good or a bad thing because you could be a shitty person and try to fuck the person's family over. There's definitely like other things that go into it that make it, I definitely get the appeal to it. And honestly, it probably is, statistically speaking, the best option. But I think people are also changing. I think people's mindsets are changing. We don't succumb or subscribe to like a lot of those old rhetorics. We just don't do that. And I feel like maybe things are going to change based on that. Maybe we're at its infancy, so it's hard to see that. But it makes sense, but I'm just not there yet. That's how I feel about it. I don't want to make it about me, but I can see why people join finances. Why do you think people separate finances? That's a conversation.
Complete autonomy in everything that you do. Because like you said, I don't want to be told, hey, you can't have this, that, and the third. Because like I'm old enough and smart enough to like reasonably know, hey, don't go buy a 80-inch 8K TV when you haven't paid all your bills yet. Or if you're in crippling debt, don't get the brand new shiny toy stuff. That's just me speaking.
Yeah, that's you. Some people are not.
And that's I'm only talking about me.
Right.
I don't give a fuck about them. I'm talking about me right now, dog. I know not to do that. Therefore, I shouldn't have to have someone gatekeeping every penny that I spend, which is why I don't subscribe to, one of the reasons why I don't subscribe to joint finances. If you don't have that control in your life, would you want to join finances with a person in the first place anyway? Is a better question.
But see, in a relationship, there's typically two types of people, right? One person's probably a natural spender, one person's a natural saver. So when you have, the ability to be able to join your finances, you learn. You have like a learning experience because now you're teaching someone how to save money and the other person's teaching another person how to take risk and spend money. So when you have that combination of knowledge, when you have that union, you're able to feed off each other's strengths. And I think that's kind of what's key. A lot of times people look at it in that sense. And also not to mention, when you have joint finances, honestly, it's so much more easy to tackle down bigger like expenses, like your debts, pulling together your money. You have much more potential to, pay down debts, make big purchases like buying homes and cars and shit like that. There's appeal to that in that sense. But here's where I take issue with that, right? Because as great as that is, if y'all end up breaking up or, getting a divorce, we all know how fucking expensive divorces are, right? If you have all your shit together and y'all end up divorcing or breaking up, oh my God. It's, it could be a disaster. And that's where like the issue comes in. Also, the biggest thing for me, I would probably say is the fact that once you get married and once you join finances, you basically become the same entity. So your credit score is now affected by the person you just got married to and join your finances. As soon as you join those finances, you're assumed to be basically almost like the same person. And that is kind of scary to me because I might have done everything perfectly my whole life, but now I'm gonna be affected by someone else's mistakes, or it could be vice versa. You know, they could have done everything perfectly their whole lives, but I might have fucked up so much, and I had to burden them with my fuck up. I will feel some type of way about that, and I wouldn't be comfortable. So I think that's probably one of the biggest drivers for me, that like I can't say I'm an advocate for joining finances. However, I'm just saying that I definitely see the benefits in it, and it makes a whole lot of sense.
Okay. All those benefits, the fact that it does make sense, because again, totally makes sense, totally reasonable. All of that taken into consideration, I still don't subscribe. I can't. It's not worth it. Like, okay, yeah, I pay off my debt faster. I can buy a bigger purchase. I can do my financial goals faster.
You're
Cool.
forgetting the biggest driver. It makes the union stronger.
So it
The
doesn't,
marriage stronger.
just because you join finances doesn't automatically mean the marriage is going to be stronger if you don't. Because you can have the same hard conversation every single month without joint finances. You'll still
Yes,
have
you
that
can, but
communication
it's
aspect.
definitely not the same impact. I would definitely have to say that. It's definitely not the same. You can have a conversation with someone, because once you have separate accounts, like you mentioned, you have complete autonomy. Like someone can advise you about what to do with that money, but they can't tell you what to do about that money. Once you have joint finances, you have to come to a consensus about what y'all going to do with that money. That forces the communication. That forces the transparency. You can't get around that shit. Yeah, you can have conversations when, like, consider this. Like, for example, a lot of times you will see in business, when it comes to finances, there needs to be that transparency. That's why you would have spreadsheets. That's why you'd have payroll. That's why you have all these things that are transparent for people to be able to, like, be on the same page, because you're pulling your resources together, whether you like it or not. So just don't even think about necessarily just in the context of marriage. You can think about in the context of us running a business. Like, we are transparent about the shit we do financially, and at least in the business aspect of it. So there's definitely that forced collaboration that you can't get if it's separate.
So what you're saying is marriage is a business.
Bro, I'm not even gonna get into that.
So
Oh
what
my
I'm
God.
hearing, big fella,
I didn't say that.
is marriage is a business. Okay, all right, that's all.
I didn't say
That's cool,
that.
bro.
I didn't
Well,
say
I'm
that.
saying it. Marriage is a business.
Okay, so marriage is definitely a signed agreement that is a contract. It is an actual financial contract. There are implications to it. Like I kind of mentioned, once
It's a business.
you could choose to look at it in that way. What I would just speak to the facts that it is a binding contract. It is probably the biggest binding contract you will ever sign in your life, for sure. If you decide to do that, I'm gonna leave it at that. And if we want to have a different conversation about this, we absolutely can. But going back to the topic at hand of just joining finances or not, I think it depends on the couple. I think it depends on what you're looking for and who you are, really. And if you can join finances and if it works for you, I think it's a good idea. If y'all could come together and learn from each other and be able to tackle things together as one union, I think it's a beautiful thing. Is that for everyone? No, I don't think so. And I think you're starting to see that more and more with millennials and Gen Zs. And there's a reason for that. Like women are becoming more and more breadwinners. Women are making more money than ever before. So, people are just more independent. It just is what it is. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Look, it's going to sound a little roundabout, but I promise you, we're staying on track, all right?
Okay.
This is why marriage is the worst business decision you could ever make in your life. So, you meet someone and you decide, yes, obviously for the logical reasons of why this person would be a good partner for you, the way they look, the way they act, the way they treat you, the way they treat themselves and others. But you also have this thing called emotion that people still seem to think is the number one reason to marry somebody. It's because I love them.
Right.
I love this person. Oh my gosh. When you create a business based off of emotion, which as we all know, does disappear as time progresses with the person, and you need to make the conscious decision to emote that emotion every single day, now your logical decision making becomes clouded. And now you have different emotions towards the same person who on paper No, they provide this, this, and this. They look like this, and this. They're hitting all the nails on the head on your list for the most part, but the emotional aspect is different. So now, if things were to go south, now you have new emotions for this person, which is why divorces end up unnecessarily disgusting. You can literally hash out all the details of a 40-year marriage in 2 days. You can literally go back, look at all the documents. I've contributed this much. You contributed this much. This is what I'll take. This is what you'll take. I'm going about our business. But it becomes dragged out because emotion comes into play. I need to get what you do to me because you made me feel like this, or you made me feel like this during this time period in our lives. Therefore, I deserve this. And it goes back and forth like that. That's not a logical way to divvy up your assets and stuff like that. Which is why you keep everything separately. You can have the conversation, we're gonna pay for this. I'm paying this much, you're paying this much towards this. You're not roommates, you're married, husband and husband, wife and wife, whatever. You're two people contributing to same common goals. If things were to go south, you know exactly who contributed what. Split it down the middle or split it down where it's even. And you're going about your business.
Okay. You said a lot of things that I think make a lot of sense.
Long rants, I know.
No,
Rant, my bad.
it's beautifully well said, and I think you make a lot of good points. And as someone who's like actually lived that lifestyle, you actually lived the life. You have a lot much more tangible, knowledge to it. I'm just looking at it from a perspective of my experiences and just shared conversations that I've had with people. I definitely want to comment on a couple of things though. One, I think let's clarify that marriage is a business contract when you are legally married, right? So not cohabitation, not like like a ceremony. We're talking about
Go down to the courthouse.
Yeah, going
you
to
sign
courthouse.
this, I sign this.
Exactly. That's I think where you're speaking to. And the second thing is I don't necessarily think that emotion goes away in a marriage. I think you kind of alluded to that as you kept speaking. It's just it evolves into something else.
So, yes, that's 100% a better way to verbalize what I said. Yes.
Right. So I think if we're keeping all those two things in context, and I think you're absolutely right. That's just the way I feel. I'm not gonna tell anyone else how to feel otherwise because people are different. That's just the way I feel about that. You can get married, and there's nothing wrong with joining your finances. I don't think. I think there's a lot of pros to it. And I'll keep saying that because I really do believe that. And you have to also understand that it's not always as simple as we've kind of made it sound because people's marriages are going to be different. Like, what happens when you have a kid in the mix? Is it that much easier to keep your finances separate? Not exactly. Like, there are other wrenches that can be thrown into the equation that you don't necessarily see coming that you are kind of forced to, like, in some way, shape, or form, put your resources together. And that can be tough. Like if y'all living in a house, whose crib is it? Like, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. It just, there's a lot of different things that go into it. And so I'm not necessarily completely against having joint finances. And I can't say that I'm all the way for having separate finances. I mean, that's for me, I feel like. But if someone was like to be like, hey, I'm married and I want to have joint finances, I would understand it as long as they're doing it for the right reasons. Just like if someone wants to say, hey, I want to get married and have separate finances, I can understand as long as they're doing it for the right reasons. I will leave you with this though. So I was talking to this OG who kind of put me on the game, and I was asking him like, how do you do it? And he was saying that he has joint finances for sure. And he was almost like, he didn't think twice about it. He was just like, that's the logical choice for me. And I was like, why? And he kind of gave me a whole backstory about, his previous relationships. And when it boils down to it, he kind of said something that resonated with me. He said basically that if you have separate accounts, then that person or your spouse could be doing anything with that account, and you never know. So, for example, if there's a couple, right, and their accounts are separate, the spouse could have like a side person on the side, and they spend all that money towards that person, and you would never fucking know. Whereas like y'all have joint accounts, you see the cash flow, you see the ins and outs. If you see a purchase at fucking Olive Garden for like $200 on a night that you wasn't there with the person, you probably gonna be raising some eyebrows and shit.
What you doing at Olive Garden, huh?
Right. So there's definitely like it's more complex. It's more complex than we might have outlined, and that's why I'm not strictly gravitating towards just one. I mean, I know what I think works for me, and that's about that.
I think for everything that's been said today, my desire to keep finances separate is probably just more of a showcasing of my level of readiness for that type of commitment.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I'm there just yet. I mean, as of right now, it is what it is, but over time, hopefully, that trust aspect will come back into my life, and
Absolutely.
I'll be able to think about joining.
And honestly, even if it does, no, I don't think anyone should ever be pressured to feel like they should join finances for a successful relationship. I think we're just not seeing those statistics yet because it has not been long enough. We're yet to see that duration to be able to quantify that, over time accurately. And I think that's the issue. Once hopefully there's more equality and we have, 50-50 equity in relationships and shit, then yeah, maybe we can kind of quantify to say, okay, it's probably more preferable to have separate finances or joint finances. But right now, I think the statistics kind of allude more towards having joint finances being a better option just because we have more data. I would say this though, regardless of whether you want to have joint finances or separate finances, the takeaways that I would just leave from the conversation, I think is, for one, get a prenup. I think that goes without saying. Prenups don't always help. I know you're looking at me like, yeah, they're not, but it's something. It's some level of potential barrier. I think you also need to have, those difficult conversations, and regardless of whether y'all have joint accounts or not. Have those difficult conversations about money before marriage. Are there any existing debts that either one of y'all might have? Because that's a common thing, financial infidelity. Like, when one person kind of hides assets or debts from the other person, that's like you're cheating on a person financially. And that's a serious thing because they might not know, and y'all might join y'all names together and y'all finances together, and they're not liable for your shit. Even when y'all divorced, you still got paid that shit out. That's fucked up. So definitely make sure you're having those difficult conversations with people before you get married. And if you're not married, like you said in the beginning of the show, I'll be curious to see what it is that makes people join finances before marriage, because I don't see the benefits in that. But, maybe we just don't know. So please leave it in the comments.
The only thing in this, you just talked on it, like in the last 30 seconds, that made me think this is why, is someone who decides we're going to just date for 30 years or some shit like that. We're going to do pure cohabituation, cohabitating?
Yeah.
One of those? We're going to do that. We're going to cohabitate with each other.
Right.
And we're not going to go down to the courthouse. And they've been together 20 years.
Right.
They have 2 houses together in different parts of the country that they both have paid equal amounts to. That I can see unmarried people joining finances. If you just met this person 8 months ago,
Facts.
and y'all joining finances, you stupid.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. Let me know in the comments.
Yeah.
Are you stupid? Am I stupid?
Am I stupid?
Which one of here is the dummy? So someone's wrong here. I want to know who it is. So let me know.
Good point. I think just having those tough conversations about, before marriage about money is important. Talking about your money habits, how you spend money, how you budget money, and be honest about it, Are you the latte person? Or are you the person who likes to go out every week? Are you the person who likes to just make meals at home? Y'all got to have those conversations. You got to talk about your future goals. You got to talk about your future aspirations. Because if your goal is to maybe go back to school in like 5 years, or maybe you want to start a business in 5 years, like you got to be able to be upfront with that, because that's a lot of money that's going to be going into that. And just, this might be a little bleak, but about 41% of people's marriages basically end due to finances, at least for Gen Z, for Gen Xers, I'm sorry. And that's a high percentage. That's a high percentage rate. So just keep that in mind when you're in talks of tying a knot, or just even in talks of, just joining your finances. It's a big step. It's a huge step. And that also goes for, living together. But finances more so, I think so. You got any takeaways or any last remarks, Drew?
Definitely seriously vet anybody you decide to have any sort of long-term relationship with. Know their habits, know how they spend, of course, how they eat, how they live their lives. It might take a few years, and that's okay. You got time. Honestly, I think that's about it. Take the time to vet the person.
Right, well.
It's just that simple.
I absolutely agree with that. And with that said, we appreciate y'all for listening. Thank you for tuning in. You can catch us on iTunes. You can catch us on Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere. Make sure y'all leave a review, Comment, subscribe, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, all of that shit. And until the next time, we'll catch y'all later. Drew, peace out, man.
Deuces.
Deuces.